The dugout smelled of damp earth and desperation, and Isaac Jennings had grown so accustomed to both that he barely noticed anymore as he crawled through the low entrance on his hands and knees, dirt crumbling from the ceiling onto his already filthy shirt. He had lost everything 6 months ago when the bank foreclosed on his ranch after a winter that killed half his cattle and a spring drought that finished off the rest, leaving him with nothing but the clothes on his back and enough stubbornness to keep breathing. Now, in the late summer of 1867, he lived like a prairie dog in a hole carved into a hillside 3 miles outside Bannock, Montana, and he told himself every morning that this was temporary, that he would rebuild, that he was not the kind of man who stayed beaten down. The sun was already climbing high when he emerged from his earthen shelter, squinting against the brightness that made his eyes water after the perpetual dimness underground. His back ached from sleeping on the hard ground, and his stomach growled with a hunger that had become his constant companion. He had work today, though, hauling lumber at the mill, and that meant 50 cents if he was lucky, enough for beans, and maybe some salt pork. He wiped the dirt from his hands onto his trousers and started the long walk into town, his boots worn so thin he could feel every stone through the soles. Bannock was bustling with the usual morning activity when he arrived, miners heading to their claims, merchants opening their shops, and women in their practical calico dresses hurrying about their business. Isaac kept his head down as he walked, aware of how he must look, how far he had fallen from the man who once owned 300 acres and employed 4 ranch hands. Pride was a luxury he could no longer afford, but shame still burned hot in his chest whenever he caught someone's pitying glance. He was halfway to the mill when he heard the commotion near the general store. A wagon had lost a wheel, tilting dangerously to one side, and a woman was struggling to keep the load from spilling into the street. Without thinking, Isaac broke into a run, reaching the wagon just as a barrel of flour began to slide. He caught it with both arms, his muscles straining as he pushed it back into place and wedged his shoulder against the wagon bed to hold everything steady. "Thank you," the woman said, breathless and flushed. "I thought I was going to lose everything." Isaac looked up and found himself staring into the most striking blue eyes he had ever seen. The woman was young, probably in her mid-20s, with dark blonde hair pulled back in a practical bun and a dusting of freckles across her nose. She wore a simple brown dress and an apron, both spotless despite her current predicament, and there was something capable in the way she held herself, like she was used to handling whatever life threw at her. "You need help getting this wheel back on," Isaac said, trying not to think about how long it had been since he had spoken to anyone, especially a woman this beautiful. "I know," she said, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I was trying to make it to the blacksmith, but I suppose I pushed my luck too far." Isaac glanced at the broken wheel, assessing the damage. "The axle is fine. If we can get it propped up, I can have the wheel fixed in no time. I have some experience with wagons." The woman studied him for a moment, taking in his dirty clothes and gaunt face, but there was no judgment in her expression, only a kind of careful evaluation. "I would be very grateful," she finally said. "My name is Zara Hawthorne. I run the boarding house on 3rd Street. "Isaac Jennings," he replied, then added without knowing why, "I used to have a ranch." Something shifted in her expression, a softening that made his throat tight. "I have heard that name. You had the spread up near Grasshopper Creek, did you not?" He nodded, not trusting his voice. Most people in town knew his story, how he had gone from prosperous rancher to living in a hole in the ground. It was the kind of tale that made people feel better about their own struggles, proof that fortune could abandon anyone. "Let me get some blocks from my wagon," Zara said, moving with quick efficiency. "We can lever it up enough to get the wheel back on." They worked together in comfortable silence, Isaac directing the operation, while Zara followed his instructions without hesitation. She was stronger than she looked, and she did not complain or flinch when the work got difficult. Within 30 minutes, they had the wheel secured and the wagon stable again. "I owe you more than a simple thank you," Zara said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Come by the boarding house tonight. I will feed you a proper meal." Pride flared in Isaac's chest, the automatic refusal rising to his lips, but his stomach betrayed him with a loud growl. Zara pretended not to notice, but a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. I have work at the mill, Isaac said. I will be dirty. I have water and soap, Zara replied. 6 o'clock. Do not make me waste a good meal waiting for someone who does not show up. Before he could argue further, she climbed onto the wagon seat and clicked the reins, leaving Isaac standing in the street with the strangest feeling blooming in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as hope. The day at the mill passed in a blur of sawdust and aching muscles. Isaac worked harder than necessary, driven by a restless energy he could not quite name. When the foreman paid him his 50 cents, Isaac stared at the coins in his palm and made a decision that would have seemed insane that morning. He walked to the general store and spent 20 cents on a bar of soap. He arrived at the boarding house at precisely 6 o'clock, his hair still damp from the frigid water of the creek where he had scrubbed away as much dirt as possible. His clothes were still shabby, but they were cleaner than they had been in weeks, and his face was shaved smooth with a borrowed razor. He stood on the front porch for a full minute before he found the courage to knock. Zara opened the door herself, and her smile when she saw him made something warm unfurl in his chest. You came. I am glad. She led him through a tidy parlor where several boarders sat reading or playing cards, into a dining room where a long table was set for the evening meal. The other boarders were already seated, and Isaac felt their curious eyes on him as Zara gestured to an empty chair. Everyone, this is Isaac Jennings, Zara announced. He helped me today when my wagon broke down, and I have invited him to dinner. The meal was simple but abundant. Beef stew with vegetables and fresh bread that tasted like heaven after months of hardtack and beans. Isaac tried not to eat too quickly, conscious of his table manners and the watchful eyes around him, but it was difficult when his stomach felt like it might turn inside out from hunger. Miss Hawthorne runs the best boarding house in Bannock, an older man across the table said. My name is George Patterson. I am a mining engineer from Boston. Isaac used to have a ranch, Zara said, serving him a second helping without asking. Up near Grasshopper Creek. Used to? George asked, and Isaac saw genuine interest rather than nosiness in his expression. Lost it last spring, Isaac said quietly. Bad winter, bad luck, and a bank that was not interested in giving me time to recover. That is a damn shame, another man said, this one younger with the calloused hands of a laborer. Pardon my language, Miss Hawthorne, but it is. Banks do not care about anything except their money. Zara nodded, her expression thoughtful. Where are you staying now, Isaac? He hesitated, the shame rising again. I have a dugout up in the hills. It is dry enough. The table went quiet, and Isaac wished he could take the words back. But Zara just nodded again, as if he had said something completely ordinary. Winter comes early here. A dugout will not keep you alive when the snow gets deep. I know, Isaac said. I am saving money. I will have enough for a cabin before the first frost. Even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. At 50 cents a day, when there was work, he would never save enough in time. But admitting that out loud felt like admitting defeat, and he was not ready to do that yet. After dinner, Zara walked him to the door. The boarding house was warm and bright, filled with the sounds of people living comfortable lives, and stepping back out into the cooling evening felt like being expelled from paradise. Come back tomorrow night, Zara said. I always cook too much anyway, and it would be a shame to waste it. I cannot keep taking your charity, Isaac protested. It is not charity, Zara said firmly. You helped me today, and I helped you tonight. That is how communities work. Tomorrow, you can help me with something else, and I will feed you again. It is a fair trade. Isaac wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes stopped him. There was a stubbornness there that matched his own, and he realized that arguing would be pointless. What do you need help with? The back steps are rotting, Zara said. I need someone to replace them before someone breaks their neck. I can do that, Isaac said. I will come by after work tomorrow. Good, Zara said, and her smile made him forget for a moment how cold the walk back to his dugout would be. The next day followed the same pattern. Isaac worked at the mill, then walked to the boarding house where he spent 2 hours replacing the rotten steps with lumber Zara had already purchased. She brought him lemonade while he worked and sat on the back porch, darning socks and asking him questions about his ranch, his life before everything fell apart. He found himself talking more than he had in months, telling her about the cattle he had raised, the horses he had loved, the satisfaction of watching something grow under his care and effort. Zara listened with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions that showed she understood more about ranching than most townfolk did. My father had a small ranch in Wyoming, she explained when he commented on her knowledge. Nothing as large as yours, but enough to teach me the basics. He died 5 years ago, and my mother followed him 6 months later. I came to Bannock because I needed a fresh start. Why a boarding house? Isaac asked, hammering in the last nail. It is respectable work for a single woman, Zara said. And I like taking care of people. It feels purposeful. Isaac tested the steps, making sure they were solid. These should last you another 10 years at least. Thank you, Zara said. Now come inside and wash up. Dinner is almost ready. The pattern continued for 2 weeks. Isaac would work at the mill or take odd jobs around town, then stop by the boarding house to help Zara with whatever needed fixing. He patched holes in the roof, repaired a squeaky door, built new shelves in the pantry. In exchange, she fed him dinner and sent him home with leftovers for his breakfast the next day. He found himself looking forward to those evenings more than he wanted to admit. Zara was easy to talk to, quick to laugh, and she had a way of making him feel like a person again rather than a cautionary tale. She told him stories about her boarders, the funny quirks and small dramas that filled her days, and he found himself laughing more than he had in years. It was during the 3rd week, while Isaac was fixing a broken window frame, that Zara brought up the subject he had been dreading. Winter's coming soon, she said, handing him a glass of water. 6 weeks, maybe 8 if we are lucky. Your dugout will not be enough. I know, Isaac said, not looking at her. I am working on it. How much money have you saved? He wanted to lie, but something about Zara made dishonesty impossible. $8. Maybe 9 if I can get steady work for the next few days. That is not enough for a cabin, Zara said gently. I know that too, Isaac said, and the frustration in his voice surprised him. But what else can I do? I lost everything. I have nothing to sell, no collateral for a loan, and no family to help me. I am doing the best I can. I know you are, Zara said, and her hand on his arm was light but grounding. I have an idea if you will hear me out. Isaac set down his hammer and turned to face her. I am listening. There is land available up near the creek, Zara said. Good land, with timber and water. If you could file a homestead claim, it would be yours. 160 acres, free and clear, as long as you build on it and improve it. I know about the Homestead Act, Isaac said, but I need a cabin built before winter, and I do not have the money for materials, even if the land is free. I have money, Zara said. I have been saving for years, and I have more than I need for just myself. I could buy the materials for a cabin, and we could build it together. Isaac stared at her, his heart pounding. Why would you do that? You barely know me. I know enough, Zara said. I know you are a hard worker, an honest man who has had bad luck. I know you do not give up, even when things are impossible. And I know that I do not want to see you freeze to death in a dugout this winter. I cannot take that kind of charity, Isaac said. It is too much. Then do not think of it as charity, Zara said. Think of it as an investment. You need a cabin, and I need help running the boarding house. Once you are settled, you could work for me part-time, doing repairs and maintenance. I would pay you a fair wage, and you could pay me back for the materials over time. Everyone benefits. It made a kind of practical sense, but Isaac still hesitated. He had spent months living on nothing, clinging to what little independence he had left. Accepting help this substantial felt like admitting he could not take care of himself. "Let me think about it," he said finally. "Do not think too long," Zara said. "Winter does not wait for pride." That night, lying in his dugout with the earthen walls pressing close, Isaac thought about Zara's offer. He thought about freezing to death alone in the hills, about dying with nothing to show for his life except failure. He thought about Zara's blue eyes and the way she listened when he talked, like his words actually mattered. He thought about the possibility of starting over, of building something new from the ruins of his old life. By morning, his decision was made. He found Zara in the kitchen of the boarding house, preparing breakfast for her boarders. She looked up when he entered, flour dusting her nose, and something in his expression must have told her his answer because she smiled before he said a word. "I will take your offer," Isaac said, "but I insist on paying you back every cent, with interest." "Agreed," Zara said. "We should go to the land office today and file your claim. Then we can start planning the cabin." They walked to the land office together, drawing curious looks from people who recognized them both. Isaac knew how it must appear, the failed rancher and the respectable boarding house owner, but he found he did not care. Zara walked beside him with her head high, and her confidence bolstered his own. The land officer was a bored-looking man named Fletcher, who perked up when they explained their business. "Homesteading, is it? Good land available up near Grasshopper Creek. 160 acres, yours free and clear if you build on it and improve it within 5 years." "I know the area," Isaac said. "I want the section near the North Bend, where the cottonwoods grow thick." Fletcher made a note. "That is a good choice. Plenty of timber for building, and the creek never runs dry. But you will need to have a cabin up before winter sets in, or you will not be able to prove continuous habitation." "We are planning to start immediately," Zara said. "How long does the filing take?" "I can have the papers ready by this afternoon," Fletcher said. "Bring $14 for the filing fee, and the land is yours." Isaac felt his stomach drop. He had not known about the filing fee. "I do not have $14. "I do," Zara said, reaching into her reticule. She counted out the money and set it on Fletcher's desk. "We will be back this afternoon." Outside, Isaac turned to her. "That is another debt I owe you." "Consider it part of the materials cost," Zara said. "Now let us go to the lumber yard and see what we can afford." The lumber yard owner, a gruff man named Dawson, eyed them skeptically when they explained what they needed. "A cabin before winter? That is cutting it close. You are looking at 6 weeks of work minimum, and that is with a full crew." "It will just be the two of us," Zara said. "But we are both capable workers." Dawson laughed. "No offense, Miss Hawthorne, but building a cabin is man's work. Heavy lifting, dangerous work with the saw and axe." "I grew up on a ranch," Zara said, her voice cool. "I have built fences, repaired barns, and helped my father frame an entire stable. I know which end of a hammer to hold." Something in her tone made Dawson hold up his hands in surrender. "All right, all right. No offense meant. Let us talk about what you need." They spent an hour planning the cabin dimensions and calculating materials. Zara wanted something practical, a single large room with a loft for sleeping, a stone fireplace for heat and cooking, and sturdy walls that would hold up to Montana winters. Dawson sketched the design and tallied up the cost. "You are looking at $90 for everything," Dawson said. "That is lumber, nails, windows, door, and the stovepipe for your fireplace. I can deliver it to your site for another $5. "We will take it," Zara said, counting out the money. Isaac watched her hand over nearly $100 without hesitation, and his throat felt tight. "Zara, this is too much. I cannot let you do this." "You are not letting me do anything," Zara said. "I am choosing to invest in someone I believe in. Now let us go pick up your homestead papers and get started." By evening, they were standing on Isaac's new land, watching the sun set over the creek. The papers were filed, The materials were ordered for delivery in 2 days, and Isaac owned 160 acres again. It did not erase what he had lost, but it felt like a beginning. "Thank you," Isaac said, the words inadequate for what he was feeling. "I will not let you down." "I know you will not," Zara said. She was standing close enough that he could smell the lavender soap she used, and when she looked up at him, her eyes were soft in the fading light. "We should get back to town. Tomorrow we start planning in earnest." The next 2 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Zara showed Isaac her father's old carpentry books, and they studied cabin construction until Isaac's eyes ached. They made lists of tools they would need, planned the layout down to the smallest detail, and calculated how many hours of daylight they would have to work with each day. Zara's boarders were fascinated by the project. George Patterson offered advice on foundation laying, having worked on construction projects in Boston. A young miner named William volunteered to help on his days off. Even the minister's wife stopped by the boarding house to donate blankets and cooking supplies for Isaac's eventual move into the cabin. "People want to help," Zara explained when Isaac expressed surprise. "You are one of their own, and they remember when you were prosperous. They want to see you succeed again." When Dawson delivered the materials, Isaac and Zara spent an entire day just organizing everything and setting up a work camp on the site. They erected a canvas tent for shade and storage, established a cooking area with a fire ring, and laid out all the tools in easy reach. "This is really happening," Isaac said, looking at the piles of lumber and the empty space where his cabin would stand. "It is," Zara said, rolling up her sleeves. "Let us get started." They began with the foundation, digging post holes and setting stones for the corners. The work was backbreaking, and Isaac insisted on doing the heaviest parts, but Zara refused to be sidelined. She hauled stones from the creek bed, mixed mortar, and worked beside him until her hands were blistered and her dress was filthy. "You should not be doing this," Isaac said, watching her struggle with a particularly large stone. "Why not?" Zara asked, not stopping. "Because I am a woman? I told you I grew up doing this kind of work." "Because I do not want you to get hurt," Isaac said, and the honesty in his voice made them both pause. Zara set down the stone and looked at him, really looked at him. "I will not break, Isaac. I am tougher than I look." "I know," Isaac said, "but I still worry." Something passed between them then, a current of understanding that needed no words. Zara's cheeks flushed pink, and she turned back to her work, but Isaac noticed that she was smiling. They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Isaac would wake before dawn and walk to the building site, where he would work until mid-morning. Then Zara would arrive with a wagon full of food and supplies, having spent the early hours managing her boarding house. They would work together until evening, when Zara had to return to town to prepare dinner for her boarders. Isaac would stay at the site, sleeping in the tent and working by firelight when he could not stand to stop. The cabin began to take shape slowly. The foundation was laid, then the floor joists, then the floor itself. They framed the walls flat on the ground, then raised them one by one, Isaac doing the heavy lifting while Zara guided and braced. It was exhausting, dangerous work, and there were moments when Isaac wondered if they would actually finish in time. But Zara never doubted, never complained. When Isaac wanted to give up after a particularly frustrating day, when nothing seemed to go right, she sat beside him by the fire and talked about how good it would feel when the cabin was done, how proud he would be to have built it with his own hands. "You are going to make it," she said. "I believe in you." And somehow, hearing her say it made it feel possible. As September turned to October, the days grew shorter and colder. They could see their breath in the mornings now, and the aspens on the hillsides turned brilliant gold. The cabin walls were up, the roof beams were in place, and they were starting on the roof itself, laying shingles in careful rows. Isaac had never worked so hard in his life, and he had never felt more alive. Part of it was the satisfaction of building something with his own hands, of watching his new home take shape board by board. But part of it, the part he was only beginning to admit to himself, was Zara. She was there every day, working beside him, encouraging him, making him laugh when the work seemed impossible. She brought him food, tended his cuts and splinters, and listened while he talked about his dreams for the future. And slowly, without him quite noticing when it happened, those dreams began to include her. He found himself watching her when she was not looking, noticing the way the sunlight caught in her hair, the determined set of her jaw when she was concentrating on something difficult, the kindness in her eyes when she looked at him. He thought about her at night when he was alone, wondered what it would be like to have her there permanently, to build a life together rather than just a cabin. But he did not dare say anything. She had already given him so much, invested so much in his future. The last thing he wanted was to make her uncomfortable or to seem like he was taking advantage of her generosity. So he kept his growing feelings to himself and tried to focus on the work. It was William, the young miner who had been helping on his days off, who finally forced the issue. He showed up one Sunday afternoon with a bottle of whiskey and a knowing grin. "So when are you going to tell Miss Hawthorne how you feel?" William asked, passing Isaac the bottle. Isaac nearly choked. "I do not know what you are talking about." "Please," William said. "Everyone in town can see it. The way you look at her, the way she looks at you. You are both dancing around it like scared rabbits." "She is my friend," Isaac said. "She is helping me, and I am grateful." "She is in love with you, you idiot," William said. "And unless I am blind, you feel the same way." Isaac took a long drink from the bottle, the whiskey burning down his throat. "Even if that were true, I have nothing to offer her. I am building a one-room cabin on borrowed money. She owns a successful business. Why would she want me?" "Maybe because you are a good man who works hard and treats her with respect," William suggested. "Maybe because she sees something in you worth investing in, or maybe, and hear me out here, because she actually likes you for who you are." Isaac wanted to argue, but the words would not come. Was it possible? Did Zara feel the same way he did? "Talk to her," William said, "before you finish this cabin and the excuse for seeing her every day disappears. Trust me, you will regret it if you do not." The next day, Isaac worked with a distraction that made him clumsy. He hit his thumb with the hammer twice, cut a board to the wrong length, and nearly fell off the roof when his foot slipped on a loose shingle. Zara noticed, of course. She noticed everything. "Are you all right?" she asked, bringing him water. "You seem distracted today." "I am fine," Isaac lied. "Just tired." Zara studied him with those sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through him. "You can talk to me, you know, if something is bothering you." "I know," Isaac said. And then before he could lose his courage, he added, "Can we talk tonight? After you are done at the boarding house?" Something flickered across her face, too quick to read. "Of course. I will come back after dinner." The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxiety and second-guessing. Isaac changed his mind a dozen times about what he would say, how he would say it, whether he should say anything at all. But William's words kept echoing in his head. "Before you finish this cabin, and the excuse for seeing her every day disappears." Zara returned just after sunset, carrying a basket with dinner for both of them. They ate in companionable silence, sitting by the fire with the half-finished cabin looming behind them. The roof was nearly done now, just another few days of work. The walls needed chinking, and the fireplace needed to be built, but the end was in sight. "So," Zara said finally, setting down her empty plate, "what did you want to talk about?" Isaac's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. "I wanted to thank you for everything you have done for me. The money, the help, the encouragement. You saved my life, Zara. I would not have survived the winter without you." "You would have found a way," Zara said softly. "You are a survivor, Isaac." "Maybe," Isaac said, "but I am glad I did not have to do it alone." He took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you respond, all right?" Zara nodded, her expression serious. "Over these past weeks, working with you, spending time with you, I have realized something," Isaac said. You have become the most important person in my life. When I think about the future, about what I want to build here, I see you in it, not just as a friend or a business partner, but as something more. He saw her eyes widen, but he pressed on before he lost his nerve. I know I do not have much to offer right now. I am still paying off my debts, still rebuilding from nothing. But I am going to make something of this land, Zara. I am going to work every day to become the kind of man who deserves you. And I am asking if you feel even a fraction of what I feel for you, if you could see a future where we build a life together, not just a cabin. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Zara stared at him, her eyes shining in the firelight, and Isaac braced himself for rejection, for the gentle letdown that would break his heart, but at least give him certainty. Instead, Zara started to laugh, not mocking laughter, but the kind that bubbled up from pure joy. You idiot, she said, and before Isaac could process the words, she was in his arms, her hands cupping his face. I have been in love with you for weeks. I thought you were never going to say anything. And then she was kissing him, and Isaac's brain stopped working entirely. Her lips were soft and warm, and she tasted like the apple pie they had eaten for dinner. His arms came up automatically, pulling her closer, and for a moment the entire world narrowed to just the two of them, the fire and the stars overhead. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Zara was grinning. I thought I was being obvious. George said I was being obvious. Even William said something to me about it last week. William told me the same thing, Isaac admitted. I thought he was crazy. We are both idiots, Zara said, and kissed him again. They stayed by the fire for hours, talking and kissing and making plans. Zara told him she had been attracted to him from the moment he caught her flour barrel, that his determination and quiet strength had drawn her in. Isaac confessed that he had been falling in love with her slowly, day by day, but had been too afraid to hope she felt the same. So what now? Isaac asked, holding her close with her head on his shoulder. I still have to finish the cabin, pay you back. We finish the cabin together, Zara corrected. And then we figure out the rest. Maybe I sell the boarding house, or maybe I keep it, and we split time between town and the homestead. We have options, Isaac. We can build whatever life we want. I like the sound of that, Isaac said. The next weeks took on a new intensity. They worked on the cabin with renewed energy, knowing that every board laid, every shingle nailed, was bringing them closer to their future together. The roof was completed, then the stone fireplace that Isaac built with his own hands, while Zara mixed mortar and handed him stones. They chinked the walls with mud and moss, hung the door and windows, and built a simple loft for sleeping. The first frost came in mid-October, glittering on the grass in the mornings and reminding them how close they had cut the timing. But the cabin was nearly done, and Isaac allowed himself to believe they would make it. Word of their relationship spread through Bannock faster than wildfire. Some people were scandalized that the respectable Miss Hawthorne was courting a man who lived in a dugout, but most were supportive, even excited. The boarding house boarders treated it like a romantic story come to life, and several people showed up at the building site offering help or gifts for the new cabin. George Patterson brought a rocking chair he had made himself. William contributed a set of cast iron pots. The minister's wife organized a quilting bee and presented them with a beautiful wedding quilt, despite the fact that Isaac had not officially proposed yet. People are assuming a lot, Isaac said, looking at the quilt. Let them assume, Zara said, running her hands over the intricate stitching. They are not wrong, are they? Eventually? No, Isaac said, pulling her close. They are not wrong. He proposed properly on the day they finished the cabin. The last shingle was nailed, the last piece of chinking pressed into place, and they stood back to admire their work. It was not a fancy structure, just one room with a loft, but it was solid and tight and would keep out the worst of the winter cold. More importantly, they had built it together. Every board and nail a testament to their partnership. It is beautiful, Zara said, tears shining in her eyes. It is home, Isaac corrected. Then he took her hand and led her inside, where the fireplace was laid, but not yet lit, where the space was empty, but full of possibility. Zara Hawthorne, I know I should wait. I know the traditional thing would be to court you properly for months, to save up for a proper ring. But we have never done things the traditional way, and I do not want to wait. He dropped to one knee, holding both her hands in his. I love you. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. You worked beside me and built this cabin with your own hands, and I cannot imagine spending a single day without you. Will you marry me? Will you make this cabin a home with me? Zara was crying openly now, happy tears streaming down her face. Yes, yes, of course, yes. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Bannock, with half the town in attendance. Zara wore a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, and Isaac wore his only good suit, borrowed from George. The ceremony was short and sweet, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the congregation erupted in cheers. The reception was held at the boarding house, which Zara had decided to keep running with the help of a hired manager. They would split their time between the homestead and town, she explained, using the boarding house income to help build up the ranch while spending most of their time on their land. Isaac barely remembered the details of the party, just a blur of congratulations and well wishes, of Zara's hand in his and her smile lighting up the room. When they finally left for their cabin, riding in a borrowed wagon loaded with gifts and supplies, he felt like the luckiest man alive. Their first night in the cabin was everything Isaac had dreamed of and more. They lit the fireplace together, the first fire in their new home, and watched the flames chase shadows across the walls. They made love in the loft, under the wedding quilt, with the sound of the creek running outside and the stars visible through the small window. Afterward, lying tangled together in the warmth, Zara traced patterns on Isaac's chest. I cannot believe this is real, she murmured. 6 months ago, I was alone, running a boarding house and wondering if this was all life had to offer. Now I am here, with you, in a home we built together. I know the feeling, Isaac said. 6 months ago, I was living in a dugout, convinced my life was over. Now I have a wife, a home, and a future. It is more than I ever hoped for. We are going to make something wonderful here, Zara said. I can feel it. She was right. The winter that followed was harsh, with deep snows and bitter cold, but inside their cabin they were warm and safe. Isaac spent the short daylight hours working on improvements, building furniture, cutting firewood, and planning for spring. Zara managed her boarding house and taught Isaac how to keep books, how to plan for lean times, and save for investments. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk about their plans. Isaac wanted to start with a small herd of cattle, maybe tin head to begin with, and build up slowly. Zara suggested chickens for eggs and a vegetable garden for food. They made lists and drew diagrams and dreamed together about what their ranch could become. They made love often, learning each other's bodies and hearts with equal passion. Isaac had never been with a woman who was his equal partner in every way, and he cherished every moment with Zara. She was strong and capable, soft and loving, passionate and practical all at once. By Christmas, Zara suspected she might be pregnant. She waited to be sure, not wanting to get Isaac's hopes up, but when she finally told him in early January, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy, then set her down carefully as if she might break. We are going to have a baby, he kept saying, wonder in his voice. A baby! We are, Zara confirmed, her hands on her still flat stomach. In late summer, if my calculations are right. Isaac dropped to his knees and pressed his ear to her belly, as if he might hear something. Hello in there, he said softly. This is your father. I'm very excited to meet you. Zara ran her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed with love for this man who had gone from living in a dugout to being the center of her world. You are going to be an amazing father. I am going to try, Isaac said. I am going to give this child everything I never had: security, love, a home. You already are, Zara said. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the spring. Zara continued working at the boarding house into her 5th month, only stopping when her growing belly made the work too difficult. Isaac was obsessively protective, constantly worried about her health, but Zara handled his hovering with patient amusement. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, she reminded him. I am not made of glass. I know, Isaac said, but you are precious to me. I cannot help worrying. Spring brought new life to their homestead. Isaac bought 6 heifers and a young bull with money saved from Zara's boarding house income, and they started their herd. He built a small barn and chicken coop, and Zara filled it with laying hens. They planted a large garden, and Zara taught Isaac how to preserve food for the winter. The work was hard but satisfying. Isaac was building something real, something lasting, and he was doing it with the woman he loved. Every morning when he woke up beside Zara, every evening when they sat together watching the sunset over their land, he felt grateful for the second chance life had given him. The baby came in late August during a thunderstorm that rattled the cabin windows. Isaac rode through the rain to fetch the midwife, Mrs. Anderson, who arrived soaked and efficient. She shooed Isaac out of the cabin, and he spent the next 6 hours pacing in the barn, listening to the storm and the occasional sound of Zara's laboring cries. When Mrs. Anderson finally called him back inside, he found Zara exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in the wedding quilt. It is a boy, she said, her voice hoarse but triumphant. Come meet your son. Isaac approached slowly, almost afraid, until he saw the baby's face. He was red and wrinkled and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists waving in the air. When Isaac touched his son's hand, the baby's fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. He is perfect, Isaac whispered. You are perfect, thank you. They named him Daniel Isaac Jennings, and he became the center of their world. Isaac had never imagined himself as a father, but he took to it with the same determination he brought to everything else. He would walk the floor with Daniel when he cried at night, singing old cowboy songs in his rough voice until the baby settled. He built a cradle with his own hands, carved with horses and cattle. Zara recovered quickly from the birth, and soon she was back to her routine of managing the boarding house and helping with the ranch work. They hired a young woman named Margaret to help with both the baby and the boarding house, giving them both more flexibility. The years that followed were the happiest of Isaac's life. Their ranch grew slowly but steadily. He added more cattle each year, built more fences and corrals, improved the cabin with additions and upgrades. Zara's boarding house continued to thrive, providing steady income that allowed them to weather bad years and invest in good ones. Daniel grew into a sturdy, cheerful boy who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Isaac taught him to ride almost before he could walk, and by age 4, Daniel was helping with simple chores and following his father everywhere. 2 years after Daniel was born, Zara gave birth to twin girls, Mary and Rose. The cabin was chaos for months, but it was joyful chaos, full of laughter and baby sounds and the constant activity of a growing family. Isaac built on an addition to give the children their own room, and the cabin that had started as a simple one-room structure grew into a proper home. More years passed, marked by small triumphs and challenges. There were good years when the cattle prices were high and the weather was perfect, and lean years when they had to tighten their belts and make do. There were illnesses and injuries, scares that reminded them how fragile life could be. But through it all, Isaac and Zara faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each passing season. On their 10th anniversary, Isaac took Zara back to the hillside where his old dugout had been. It had collapsed years ago, filled in and overgrown, barely visible anymore. They stood looking at it, remembering how far they had come. Do you ever think about what would have happened if my wagon wheel had not broken that day? Zara asked. All the time, Isaac admitted. I might have frozen to death that first winter, or given up and moved on, started over somewhere else as a hired hand or laborer. I would have survived, but I would not have really lived. I think about it too, Zara said. I was content with my life, but I was not happy. I was just going through the motions, running my boarding house and telling myself it was enough. Then you came along and reminded me what it felt like to build something, to work toward a dream. Isaac pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. We built a good life, did we not? We built an amazing life, Zara corrected. And we are not done yet. She was right. There were more years ahead, full of watching their children grow, of expanding the ranch, of facing new challenges and celebrating new victories. Daniel eventually took over much of the ranch work, freeing Isaac to spend more time on the business side. The twins grew into capable young women who could rope a calf and balance accounts with equal skill. Isaac never forgot what it felt like to have nothing, to live in a dugout and wonder if he would survive another day. That memory kept him humble and grateful, kept him focused on what mattered. And every night, when he climbed into bed beside Zara in the cabin they had built together before the snow, he thanked whatever fate or fortune had brought them together. By the time Isaac turned 50, their ranch was one of the most successful in the region. They employed several ranch hands, ran over 200 head of cattle, and had built a reputation for quality stock and fair dealing. Zara had eventually sold the boarding house, using the money to build a proper ranch house that was larger and more comfortable than the cabin, though they kept the cabin as a guest house and a reminder of where they had started. Their children were grown by then. Daniel had married a rancher's daughter from the next valley and built his own cabin on the far edge of their property. Mary had surprised everyone by becoming a teacher in Bannock, while Rose had married a lawyer and moved to Helena. But they all came home regularly, filling the ranch house with grandchildren and laughter. One evening, as Isaac and Zara sat on the porch of the ranch house watching the sunset, their hands intertwined, Isaac thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a dugout to a thriving ranch, from desperation to contentment, from loneliness to a love that had sustained him through everything. What are you thinking about? Zara asked, squeezing his hand. Just how grateful I am, Isaac said. For you, for our life, for everything we built together. We made something good, did we not? Zara said. Out of nothing, out of failure and loss, we made something beautiful. We did, Isaac agreed. And I would do it all again, every hard moment, every struggle, just to end up here with you. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The land they had claimed and built on spread out before them, testament to years of hard work and stubborn determination. The cattle were settled for the night, the horses in their corrals, the chickens roosting in their coop. Everything was exactly as it should be. Later that night, lying in their bed in the ranch house that had taken years to build, Isaac held Zara close and thought about the young man he had been, living in a dugout and convinced his life was over. He thought about the woman who had offered him help when he had nothing, who had believed in him when he barely believed in himself. He thought about how close he had come to giving up, and how glad he was that he had kept fighting. I love you, he whispered to Zara, who was already half asleep. I love you too, she murmured back. Always have, always will. And in the darkness of their bedroom, in the house built on land they had claimed together, surrounded by the life they had created from nothing, Isaac Jennings finally let go of the last remnants of shame and failure that had haunted him for so long. He had lost everything once, but he had gained something far more valuable in return. He had found love, partnership, and a home. He had found Zara, and with her he had found himself. The ranch continued to prosper in the years that followed. Isaac and Zara grew old together, their hair turning gray, their hands becoming weathered from decades of work. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, tempered by shared experiences and deepened by the life they had built together. They celebrated their 50th anniversary surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a few great grandchildren. The party was held in the meadow where their original cabin still stood, maintained as a monument to their beginning. Daniel gave a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes, talking about how his parents had shown him what real love looked like, what partnership meant, how two people could face anything together. They started with nothing, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. My father was living in a dugout. My mother was alone in town. They had every reason to give up, to accept that life had beaten them. Instead, they found each other, and they built this. He gestured to the ranch spread out around them. Not just the land and the buildings, but a family, a legacy, a love that has sustained us all. Isaac stood and pulled Zara to her feet, holding her close as their family applauded. I did not do it alone, he said. Your mother saved my life in every way a person can be saved. She gave me hope when I had none, helped me build a home when I had nowhere to live, and loved me when I had nothing to offer. Everything good in my life came from her. We saved each other, Zara corrected, smiling up at him. And we built this life together. One board, one day, one choice at a time. That is what I want all of you to remember. Life will knock you down. It will take things from you. But if you have love, if you have partnership, if you refuse to give up, you can build something beautiful from the ruins. The party lasted until sunset, full of music and laughter and the kind of joy that comes from being surrounded by people you love. Isaac danced with Zara under the stars, their bodies moving in the familiar patterns they had learned over 50 years together, and he felt like the luckiest man who had ever lived. As the years continued to pass, Isaac and Zara gradually stepped back from the day-to-day work of the ranch, turning most of it over to Daniel and his sons. They spent their days sitting on the porch, reading, talking, and watching the world go by. They took long walks around the property, remembering the early days when every fence post, every building had been a victory. One autumn day, when the aspens were gold and the air had that crystalline quality that meant winter was coming, they walked out to the site where Isaac's dugout had been. You could not see it anymore. The earth had long since claimed it back, and grass grew thick over the spot. But Isaac knew exactly where it had been, could still remember the smell of damp earth and the feeling of desperation that had filled his days. Do you know what I think about when I remember that time? Isaac said, his arm around Zara's shoulders. What? Zara asked, leaning into him. I think about how a broken wagon wheel changed my life, Isaac said. If that wheel had not broken, if I had not stopped to help you, I might have died alone in that dugout, or I might have given up and left, started over somewhere else as someone else. But instead, I met you and everything changed. Fate, Zara said, or luck, or just two people who needed each other finding each other at exactly the right moment. Whatever it was, I am grateful, Isaac said. For every moment, every struggle, every triumph, I would not change a single thing. They stood there for a long time, watching the sun move across the sky, holding each other in the way that only people who have shared a lifetime together can. The wind rustled through the grass, carrying the scent of approaching winter, and Isaac thought about how fitting it was that they had started their journey racing to build a cabin before the snow, and now, at the end of their lives, they were still together, still standing strong. Isaac passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Zara holding his hand. He had lived a long, full life, so different from the desperate man living in a dugout. He died surrounded by his family, in the ranch house he had built, on the land he had claimed and improved. He died knowing he had made a difference, that he had built something lasting, that he had loved and been loved in return. Zara lived another 5 years, kept going by her fierce will and her determination to see each of her grandchildren married and settled. She spent those years telling stories about Isaac, about their early days, about building the cabin before the snow and falling in love while doing it. She wanted everyone to know the story, to understand that no matter how low you fall, there is always a chance to rise again. When Zara finally passed, also peacefully in her sleep at the age of 81, she was buried next to Isaac on a hillside overlooking the ranch they had built together. Their grave markers were simple but elegant, carved from local stone by one of their grandsons. Isaac's read, "Beloved husband, father, and friend. He built a life from nothing." Zara's read, "Beloved wife, mother, and partner. She helped him build, and they built together." The ranch continued for generations, passed down through their children and their children's children. The original cabin was preserved and maintained, a testament to where it all began. Couples getting married in the family would spend their first night there, in the loft where Isaac and Zara had spent their wedding night, continuing a tradition that honored the love story that had started everything. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind was right, people swore they could hear laughter coming from the cabin, the sound of two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life, a love, and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. The story of Isaac and Zara became a legend in Bannock and the surrounding valleys. It was told around campfires and dinner tables, passed down as an example of what determination and love could accomplish. Children grew up hearing about the man who lived in a dugout and the woman who helped him raise a cabin before the snow, and how they had created something beautiful together. Historians would later document their story as an example of typical homesteading experiences in Montana during the late 1860s, but the dry facts in the historical records could never capture the reality of what they had shared. The documents showed dates and land claims, building permits and cattle sales, births and deaths, but they could not capture the feeling of working side by side in the summer heat, of racing against the coming winter, of falling in love while building a dream. Daniel, in his old age, wrote down everything he could remember his parents telling him about those early days. He wanted the full story preserved, not just the facts, but the emotions, the struggles, the small moments of grace that had sustained them. His account became a treasured family document, copied and shared with each new generation. "They taught us that love is not just about feelings," Daniel wrote. "It is about showing up every day and doing the work. It is about building something together, board by board, day by day." My father started with nothing, living in a hole in the ground, and my mother helped him build a cabin before the snow came. But what they really built was a partnership that could weather anything, a love that grew stronger with every challenge they faced together. The ranch that Isaac and Zara built lasted for over 150 years, finally being sold out of the family in the early 21st century. But even then, the new owners preserved the original cabin, recognizing its historical significance. It became a museum of sorts, showing visitors what life had been like for homesteaders in the Wild West, how much work and determination it took to carve a life out of the wilderness. But for those who knew the true story, the cabin represented something more than history. It represented hope, second chances, and the transformative power of love. It stood as proof that no matter how far you fall, no matter how impossible your situation seems, there is always a path forward if you are willing to work for it, and if you are lucky enough to find someone willing to walk that path with you. Isaac Jennings had lost everything and ended up living in a dugout, convinced his life was over. Zara Hawthorne had been content but lonely, going through the motions of a respectable but unfulfilling life. Together, they had built something extraordinary, not just a cabin before the snow, but a love that lasted a lifetime and a legacy that endured for generations. Their story became more than just a tale of survival or even romance. It became a testament to the human spirit, to the power of partnership, to the idea that our worst moments can become the doorway to our best lives if we are brave enough to walk through them. And all of it started with a broken wagon wheel, a helping hand, and two people who recognized in each other the possibility of something better. In the end, That is what their story really meant. Not the specifics of logs and nails, cattle and acres, though those were important, but the simple truth that sometimes the most broken among us just need someone to believe in them, to help them build something new from the ruins of what came before. Isaac had needed Zara, and Zara had needed Isaac, and together they had created something neither could have built alone. The cabin stood for decades after their deaths, solid and true, just as they had built it. And every time someone looked at it, they were reminded that love is not just about grand gestures or passionate declarations. Sometimes, love is about showing up with lumber and nails when someone needs a home. Sometimes love is about working side by side through summer heat and autumn cold, building something that will shelter you both through the long winter ahead. Isaac and Zara had understood that. They had lived it, built it, and passed it down through generations. And their cabin, raised against the threat of winter snow by two people who found each other at exactly the right moment, stood as an enduring monument to what is possible when two hearts join together in common purpose. That was their legacy. Not just the land or the family, though both were precious, but the example they set, the story they lived, the proof they provided that from the deepest despair can come the greatest joy, and that sometimes all you need to change your life is another person willing to help you build.